Greetings, welcome to another vlog. We're still at it. It's been about 2 days since I uploaded the panels. And I just literally finished getting the last of the panels caulked. They're going to be sitting out here for a week or two. So I am moving right into the next project. And the next project is more wall panels. This time we are replacing a pattern, our photo hallway. The panels in there, those are the original panels that I made over 12 years ago. The foam is extremely brittle on them. It doesn't take much to break them, and they're getting pretty marked up, so they need to be replaced. In fact, here's what those panels look like. Okay, there you go. And now you know what I meant by photo hallway. It's a wallpaper pattern, basically, is what it is. And we're going to stick to the same type of thing, but it's going to be wainscoting on the bottom, wallpaper on the top, and I'm just now in the process of getting the pattern figured out. I spent some time on the computer last night, me and the set dresser, my wife, Sue, looking at different wallpapers, and we came up with two ideas. One, for the wallpaper itself, we're going to use this pattern. And then I want to do something different on the wainscoting. It's going to be the wood panel, but I was thinking about maybe cutting in the silhouette of a skull across it. So I'm not sure if we're going to use that one. I'm going to lay out a panel and take a look at it to see if I like it or not. But so I got a skull, and what I've done is I've taken some 3M high strength 90 contact adhesive. Yes, YouTube. Product placement. Love it or lump it. But anyway, I put some on the back of each of the pictures, and I've adhered them to a thin sheet of plexiglass. Normally I use Luan, but plexiglass works well too. And I'm gonna go in and grab some lunch here in a sec. So I'm gonna let these dry for about a half hour. When I get back out here after lunch, I've got to get the skull cut out, and then I got to get this cut out. And this will basically give me a stencil that I can lay on the foam panels and just trace out. It helps speed it up instead of trying to do it all by hand. So, this is the first stage in doing a wall panel. All the wall panels had some form of stencil to them. And I've saved all the stencils for all. Alright, patterns are done. I'm doing something a little bit different. The skull is fine. I'm not doing the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. I'm just going to do the outside edge to give a silhouette. I cut the wallpaper pattern into this. And this is where it's usually a little different. Usually, I would take the main design of the wallpaper pattern, which is the part that goes in here, and then just put that on the foam, trace around it, and just do it over and over and over and over and over again. I want to try a little different. I decided I'd cut these out, and there's a half there, half there, half all the way around the side, and then there's 4 holes in the middle. I'm going to try just putting this on the foam and getting my pattern out, by tracing around it, and see which way I like better. If I end up not liking doing it this way, I could put this on the foam and get my measurements and do what I need to do. But it's something I'm going to kind of wonky with. I'm trying something a little bit new. But anyway, patterns are done. It's time now to get into the basement to my other workshop, and we're going to start laying out the foam. And once I figure out what I'm doing, I'll give you a look at the finished panel. Okay, we'll open this segment with Kaylee. She saw me grab the camera. She wanted to be in the vlog. Kay's being a good girl, huh? She actually wants to go do her walk, but she's got about an hour to go. Uh, got the pattern finally laid out. This one here, and as you can see, it is a disaster area. Was the first panel I did, and it took me about 4 hours going over this, get things adjusted, to end up with this. That's going to be the final look of the panels. But like I said, it took 4 hours to do that. You know, I messed around with the wainscoting first and getting the skulls lined up where I wanted them. And then went and did the wallpaper, and I did the wallpaper 4 or 5 different times until I finally got my measurements down. Now, as I was doing that, I went and wrote up some crib notes. Like, here's for the wainscoting. I've got all my measurements, like that 2 1/4 inches there is this strip here that's going down the sides and across the top, and of course that panel wants to swivel on me. Then I did the layout of the first row of skulls and then all the way down. And every time I got something figured out in place where I wanted it, I wrote down the measurements. Now these measurements, the first 5 or 6 panels I do, I'll be referring back to those crib notes in order, you know, to get things set to where I want them. After that, I'll start referring to the crib notes less and less, because I'll start just automatically, you know, it's like muscle memory, you know, I'll just automatically start remembering what to do. But until I get used to laying out the pattern, the crib notes come in handy. And I've got them for the wainscoting and for the wallpaper. And the wallpaper is actually easier to do. But effectively, I've got 2 panels done. I've got 41 more to do, and it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how fast I move. But, you know, it's about an hour, hour and a half, I want to say, to sketch a panel out. So it's going to take me a couple of days. Well, first off, Happy New Year. It's New Year's Eve. And it's just a little bit after 6 o'clock. Figure I'd give you a look at this. Not sure how well it's showing up from a distance. But I've got all 46 panels with their design on them. From the wallpaper on down to the wainscoting. It's not wainscoting, it is wainscoting. But anyway, that's done. Now I need to get set up for carving. Probably not going to do any carving tonight. It's a little bit after 6. I might just take the rest of the evening off and enjoy it with the family. Now, to do the actual carving, I use a Dremel. This is a, God, what is it? Dremel 4500, I think it is. 4300. And it's variable speed. You can go different speeds with it. Now, I find that comes in handy depending on what I'm doing. I normally have it set at 2500 for most of my carving. In it, I am using a grout removal bit. Basically used for tiles, you know, when you're doing tiling. You know, this, you know, if you want to re-grout, you know, your shower, you run this over your grout lines. It gets rid of the grout and put fresh grout in. Works excellent for foam carving. Most of my patterns, I have a lot of, you know, like here, you know, tight areas, or down here on the chin, tight areas. And that grout removal bit, it removes 1/8 of an inch. So as I follow the lines around, it does a really, really good job on that. Now you can get router bits for the Dremel that work just as well, but they take out a wider swatch of foam as you carve, and it's really hard to do detail work with them. And I prefer the smaller bit. That's basically what I use. I get all my carving and stuff done with that. Now, with the first panel I did, and you'll get a look at the panels here a little bit later after they've been carved, I always do a depth gauge, because I'm going to be using two different depths with the Dremel. And I did some testing on the first panel to get my depth I wanted for the skulls, so I made a score on the foam. That's my depth. And when I go to set the router, I just basically put that notch over the bit, and I can raise or lower the bit to that depth. Once I get done with that, I did a second mark, which is a little bit more shallower, as you can see, and that will do the field on the skulls and this here. And this allows me to get it exact from one panel to the other. Which comes in handy. And then the third phase is sanding. And I'll cover the sanding of this and some different techniques that you can use when I get to the sanding point. But let's get this panel carved. Okay, we got the portion of the deeper cut, which is this one here, done on the skulls. And basically all I'm doing on them for this pattern is outlining them. I'm not putting in eyes, nose, and mouth. I just want the silhouette of a skull on it. Now I've got the Dremel set for the shallow cut. We're going to start up here on the wallpaper, and we're going to start carving out this section here across the whole panel. It takes a while. There's 80 of these altogether to do per panel. So I guess it's time to get started on it. Now that we got the carving on the wallpaper done, it's time to move down here. Now if you remember right, in one of the previous segments I talked about the skulls, and I was just doing the outline. Now the surface here, I don't want at the same level as the border. I want it recessed. So I'm leaving my Dremel set to the same depth as why I did this. And now I've got to go through this whole area from that line to this line, and from there down the end, and remove the whole thing. And that will still leave these set a little bit different, deeper. But that's our next step with the carving. Okay, officially the Dremel work, aka the carving, is done. This is the section I just got done doing. We got one step left to finish the panel off, and that's using this. This is a sanding block. It's a piece of 1x2 that I've wrapped some 80 grit sandpaper around, fastening it with staples. And I've got to go over and sand this. The detail in here on the wallpaper, I'm going to leave as is. That way if someone touches the panel at all, they'll get a little bit of a roughness, a little bit different texture. Down here, I'm going to sand this, for the most part, smooth. But there are some spots like this here. I'm not going to sand all the way out. I'll leave them kind of scattered through the panel to give the same feeling as up here. I want a little bit different texture. Now normally on my old original panels I did for the photo hallway, I did not sand the surface of the foam. I just left it as is and painted it. Ran into a problem. Paint does not like to stick to the smooth foam. It wants a rough texture. And on the old panels, every year, the panels tend to stick together a little bit, or due to the paint, and we end up having to go back through and touch them up, which is a hassle. I found if I go through and I roughen up the surface of the paint, not only does the paint stick to the foam a little bit better, the panels don't stick together. Hence, I will be sanding both the wallpaper and down here on the wainscoting as well on the surface. Now, one thing you gotta be real careful of or one thing you need to be aware of, I should say, when you're sanding the surface of the foam or any part on the foam, be mindful on what way you sand. You don't, well, I was going to say you don't want to go into circle or just, you know, all over the place. Depends on the look you're going for. But once you sand and rough these up, you will see your sanding marks, you know. So like down here, I'll be sanding this way, you know, along with, like you're sanding a piece of wood, you go with the grain. And the same thing here. So all my sanding marks will match up. Up here, I could do the same thing. That way, you know, start up there and work my way down here. I didn't want to do that. I took into account, you know, that the sand lines are going to match or show up. So I'll be sanding both this way and this way as I go down the panel on each one. And what I do is I just do one line, you know, till it's done, and then come back and do the other. And I'll be doing that, flip-flopping it. I've never done that before. Normally I just keep it all running in the same direction. And it will be interesting to see what the pattern looks like on once they're painted. There we go, there's the wainscoting. Add some foam on the lens. Let's see if we can back up here, give you a little bit better look. Of course, you can't see too much detail. Everything's kind of pink. But I did this pattern on the edge. I only did half of one. That one when I butt the panels up. Ends up with a full one. But there we go. There's a look at the finished one. Now, once I get all 46 panels to this phase, we'll get them moved out in the shop, and we'll get started with the painting process, which will take a while. Because of the cold temps, things are not drying quick out there. Oh, dirty lens. Sorry, had the camera down when I was foam carving. Blow you off. Now you look better. Had the camera down when I was foam carving at, and I got foam all over, and I didn't check before I hit the record button. I'm still in the middle of foam carving downstairs, but we're taking a break from that to get out here and work on these. This is the first set of 23 I carved. There's one there and 22 more there. I've gotten out here, I've sprayed a primer coat over all 23 of them several days ago. Right now we've been averaging anywhere from 1 degree up to 30 degrees. And with the temperature being cold, I've got a little heater out here, but still the shop is averaging around 40 degrees. In between 40 to 50, depending on how hot it gets outside. So it's taking longer for the paint to dry. So what I've been doing is like now, I shot the primer coat, I let it set for a couple of days. While they're drying, I'm in the house carving panels. You know, now they're dry, I'm ready to go on to my next step. I also have all my paints set up I'm going to use. We're going to do a light brown on the wainscoting, and the outline of the skulls are going to be done in gold. And then we've got a burgundy red that's going up here on the wallpaper, and the design up here, I'm not sure what you would call that, it looks like almost like a top or a teardrop, are going to be in yellow. I got to start applying those. My first step, however, I'm going to get this panel, and the first step I'm going to do is I'm not sure if I'm going to do red first or brown first. I'm leaning more toward doing the brown. The red and the brown are going to be rolled on, and I'll do that. I'll cover that when I get ready to do it. But the first step I want to do, because I am not the most careful painter in the world, I tend to get paint everywhere. So a little extra step, I got some painter's paper, and I'm going to cut out 23 pieces of it, and we're going to tape it right here for doing the brown, and then when we're ready to do the red, I can unstick it move it over here onto the brown, tape it down to do the red. But I need to get some paper cut and start applying it to the panels. So that's going to be my next step. I think we're going to do the brown first. So I'll be mounting it here. Right there. All the way across. Well, progress made somewhat. I went, took some painter's paper and tape, and I masked off all 23 panels, and I got one up on the table. I decided I'm going to do the brown first, but I have a decision to make, and that has to do with the outlines here on the skulls. Those are going to get painted gray. Or not gray, but gold, sorry. Those are getting painted gold. And my problem is what order do I do this in? Technically, I should come through and do the gold first. I could do it one of two ways. I could use an airbrush, or I could use a paintbrush, you know, a small detail paintbrush. The problem with the paintbrush is once you carve this foam, it gets very rough, almost like a sandpaper. And the detailing brushes that I would use are fairly small. You know, they're not, you know, the big wide brushes, they're the small thin ones. The foam will eat up the brushes. And I'll get maybe one panel done, maybe two panels done, and I'd have to throw the paintbrush in the trash because there wouldn't be any bristles left on it. Which means I'd be going through a lot of paintbrushes. Plus, with using a paintbrush, it takes a hell of a lot longer than using the airbrush. So I could, I decided I'm going to use my airbrush. But I've got a problem with that, too. If I go through and do the gold first, spray the gold on, I'm going to have some slop on the surface. You always have a little bit of overblow. And when I go to roll the brown on, it will cover that slop. The problem is, the roller also, when you're putting that on, tends to get down in the line. So I would still have to come back with a paintbrush and touch up each panel. And run into the same problem as if I was brushing the whole thing. I'd go through a lot of paintbrushes. And it would take more time. Now, the workaround on that is, and what I'm going to end up doing, is I'm going to go ahead, do the brown first, let it dry. Then I'm going to come back with the gold in the airbrush, do the outline, let that dry, and then I'm going to have to come back with the brown again and go through around the edge of each of the lines and clean up the gold. You know, give it some brown, you know, to go over the gold. Being careful not to drip into the lines. So, you know, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to get a little bit of brown paint inside on the gold. But if I'm careful with it and stuff, it shouldn't be all that bad. Well, we're back out at it. Hasn't been 2 days. It's been 1 day spacing. I finished the painting day before yesterday. I figure, well, I'll come out today, take a look at it. Our washer and dryer for our clothes is right by my workbench downstairs, which is where I'm doing my carving. Well, Swan's doing laundry today, and if I do any carving, I'm going to end up getting foam all over the laundry. So I told Sue I'd come out here and check and see if I could do some work out here in the shop today. And, you know, that'll give her a chance to get the laundry and stuff done. And I'm out here looking, and it looks like it's, for the most part, dried. And I have noticed, like over here, I don't know if it's, yeah, it is. You can see the white lines there. That's what's going to be getting the gold. But if you look over here, there's brown. And it's like that. You know, kind of scattered through each panel. It's like that. So I'm glad I didn't do the gold first and then the brown. But our next step is going to be up here, the wallpaper. So I'm going to have to get in here, take the paper off, and move it down here so the wallpaper is exposed. And I can come back through with my burgundy red, and we'll roll the upper part. Now another thing I did too, when I was spraying the brown, was I got the fasteners out that will be used in that area to hold these to the wall. And I got them sprayed the right color so they'll blend in. I'm going to have to do the same thing on the red. And you can see the blue fasteners there. That's the old color. Those will be getting sprayed red too. But I'll get the rolling and stuff done first. Get the fasteners sprayed with the red. And then these things are just going to sit out here. Well, we're back downstairs. I got the second half of the panels carved. They're out in the shop getting the primer, the red, and the brown on them. And while those are drying, I'm downstairs with the first half. Now, I'm doing some touch-ups at the moment on the white here on the design. When I rolled it, I got some red down here where the yellow is supposed to go. The yellow will take 2 to 3 coats to cover that red. So I figured I'd be smart, and I got a bowl of white paint there underneath my phone. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to touch up all of these before I start adding any more colors on it. And I started last night. I got 4 panels done. And as you can see, they all look white. All the red's been covered up. And it was pretty much like this one. You know, there's only a couple of spots here and there on each panel that need to be covered. So it's a real quick process. And we'll go through all the panels, get the white done, and then we'll add on to another color. A little bit more progress made. I got all 23, which is half of the panels, touched up on the white. And I could turn around and start doing the yellow and getting the yellow done up here. But I decided instead I am going to work on doing the outline on the skulls, which is going to be gold. My little airbrush is here. And I've got one panel done right there. And you can see how sloppy it is. I'm going to have to come back and touch up the brown, finish it off by brush. I will not spray it, I will do it by brush. Which is fine. I've noticed when I was doing the white, the brown is kind of splotchy. It's thin in some areas, thick in another areas. So it's going to need a second coat anyway. So I'll just go ahead and I'll do it by brush. You know, we'll add a little bit more time to it. I am also going to have to do it to the red once I get the yellow done, because like here, I got some white. Here and there, across the panel, I'm going to probably end up with a little bit yellow on the red as well. So I'll come back through after I get the yellow on here, and I'll touch up the red, touch up the brown, and then the panels will be done. Okay, it's the next day. Panels have had a chance to dry. It took me about a day to get all the skulls outlined on the panel. And I mean outlined by doing that little dent. But the paint's dry, so technically I could come back with brown and go through and clean up all the skulls. But I decided I don't want to do that. I want to get the last color on the board, and that is that there, yellow. And that's going into the indents up on the wallpaper, the actual design on the wallpaper. I've gotten 2 panels done so far. Here, we'll back up a little bit. And I think you got yellow and red, brown and gold. Now, like with the skulls and the brown and the gold down here, I got touch-ups there to do. I'm going to have the same thing on the red up here. You can see a little bits of yellow here and there. The red needs a second coat, just like the brown. So I'll go through and I'll do my touch-ups on the red and the brown after I get the yellow done. Now, I had a choice on this too. And I chose to do it by brush. It takes a little bit longer by brush. I could have used my airbrush like I did with the gold and just sprayed them all. The problem with that is to get this yellow to work on the airbrush, I have to water it down. And, or because it's just way too thick paint, so it has to be watered down. Which would mean I'd have to go over the design several times to get, a thick enough coating of the yellow on. And then I would also have a bigger mess on the red to have to clean up. So now it becomes a matter of time. It takes about a half hour, 45 minutes to go through and brush the yellow on, trying to be as careful as I can with it so I don't do too much slop up here on the red. And if I compare that to having to go over and do all the panels several times with the airbrush, it amounts to about the same amount of time. So I am just going to do the yellow by the brush instead of... we got the yellow in on the panels. It took about 2.5 days to do the yellow. There was a lot of yellow. In the process now, like if you can tell on this panel, I got some yellow and stuff splattered up on the reds. I'm giving the red a second coat, which I've gotten 11 panels done, and it looks way, way better. I do have one more little touch-up I need to do. Once I get all the red done and it's dry, like right there, you can see a little dark spot there. I don't have enough light. There you go. I got just a touch of red and on that one. Not all of them are like that. There's just like one or two little spots, that need just a little dot of yellow. I'll go back through the panels once I get all the red done and do that. The first couple ones I did are a little messier because I was just getting the hang of it. You got to figure out how much pressure to put on the paintbrush, but you don't want to put so much pressure on the paintbrush that it drips over the side and gets the yellow. So the first couple of paintbrushes or panels I did have a little bit more red splattered on them than others do. It's a matter of getting the practiced hand. But anyway, we're going to get second coat on red in and then get the yellow touched up, and then we'll be done with the wallpaper section on the first. Okay, we got all 23 panels with the wallpaper effect finished. The yellow's done, the red's done. Now it's time to turn our attention to the last piece on these, and that's the wainscoting. I've got to go through and give it the brown a second coat, which will clean up all the slop from spraying the lines. Sue Ann and I were talking and we're wondering if doing the gold was the right idea. It does kind of blend in to the brown. We're wondering if we should have done it in a silver. It would have stood out a lot more. But that's something I'm not going to worry about. We did it in gold, we'll finish it in gold, and maybe down the line, when I have to go to maintenance these or repaint them, I'll switch it over to silver at that time. But for now, I think gold's good enough. Now, to get this cleaned up, I'm going to have to use a brush. And I'm going to end up using 3 different sizes of brushes. I'm going to use a wide brush to do the outside trim. And for the field in here, since I've got a large area with skulls and the smaller gap areas in between the skulls, I'm going to use 2 different size brushes. This brush here I'll use for doing the skulls, and then this size brush here I'll do all the small areas with. And I can adjust the brush size as needed. The idea is to come through here and clean up all the slop, all the from the spraying, without getting brown down in on the gold. And I'm probably going to get a little bit of brown down in on the gold. I already know that, that's the way I paint. So I may end up having to come back through with a small brush and just touch up the gold, like I had to do on the yellow after I got done with the red. I ended up with some brush strokes on every so often. So, but anyway, well, the color change did the trick. I went, after I shot the last clip, which was yesterday morning, I spent the rest of the day going through and covering up the gold with black. And then last night, the last panel I did was that one right there. And the black does make a big, big difference. Now the skulls stand out. So now I've got to go through and give the brown a second coat to cover up both the black and the gold slop. And one thing I did kind of notice, and it depends on lighting, the brown, I can hardly see with my eye, I doubt the camera's picking it up, but the brown doesn't completely cover all the black. You know, the black shows through slightly, and I mean real slight. But it's not to the point where I need to go over the panels twice to cover that black up. I'm going to leave it. It kind of gives the skulls a kind of a dirty look around the edges, you know, like they've been smudged or what have you, and I kind of like that. So now, to finish off this first set of 23 panels, I need to go over all of them with brown, looking like that. And then we'll be officially halfway done with the project. Okay, first 23 panels are totally finished. And we did change the gold over into black. But they're done. They're ready to go out in the pile. Now, we've got the second 23. And, if you remember right from the earlier segment, when I did the first set, I went and took a roller, and I rolled brown on for the wainscoting, and the red on, you know, for the wallpaper. And I had quite a bit of work doing the yellow and what have you by brush and everything. I'm going to try doing this different. Now, since when I originally rolled the red on, I got some red down in here where the yellow goes. I had to go back through with white and touch up all the panels so the yellow would cover, then come back through, do the yellow. And then after that, I had to come back through and touch up the red, which meant doing the red a second time. Well, I decided I'm just going to primer the panels. So I'll come in here, I'll do the yellow, and then come back through and I'll have the touch-ups up here on this white portion. I'll just cover that in the red and be done with it. It should save some time. Down here with the brown, since we've decided to go to black, I won't be spraying the gold in here in the lines. We'll just be spraying black. But I am going to have a slop around the outside that I'm going to have to clean up, just like I did on the first set. So there's no point in rolling the brown on either. I'll just come back through with a brush and paint it on. You know, so in the long run, it should save time, and it will save paint. So, we'll see. I may end up coming back through both on the brown and on the red and giving it two coats, but it's going to be done by brush. I'll have to wait and see how it looks after, you know, I get done messing with it. Well, it took about 2.5 days, just a little over 2 days really. But we got the yellow all hand brushed on all 23 panels. I started on doing the red, and I'm doing the red by brush. I've gotten 3 done. I got 2 put in the back, and then I got this one. And as you can see there, and up there, I got some red on the yellow. I knew that was going to happen as I was dragging the paintbrush over the areas that needed red. It was going to, you know, I was going to get some spots here and there. So once the red's done, I am going to have to come back, just like on the other panels, and touch up the yellow. I am also on the red, once it dries, when I'm doing the touch-ups on the yellow, I'm going to have to take a look at each panel too, paint, as it dries, shrinks a bit. Now, looking at it wet, it looks like I've got total coverage. But I may have some little dots of white here and there on them once the paint dries. And when I'm touching the yellow, I'll get the red out, and I'll come back over and I'll hit those areas if need be. It's a necessary evil. It happens. Even with rolling, which tends to put a little bit more paint on the panels, I had areas I still needed to go back over and touch up because the paint shrunk and the primer coat was showing. So I'm going to have to do that. But for right now, I want to get all the panels with the red on, and then we'll worry about touching up the yellow and any possible touch-ups on the red. Okay, we got the wallpaper done. As to the red, I ended up having to give it a second coat. I believe in the last segment I mentioned about the paint shrinking as it dries, and it did do that, and I had some white dots showing here and there, and I could have just gone through and touched those up. But I noticed when I was actually doing the painting, it looked like everything was covering. But as the paint dried and shrunk a little bit, I had splotches where the white was kind of showing through. And the only way of covering that was doing 2 coats of red, which I did, and I went back through and I touched up the yellow, so the yellow looks all okay on it. Now that leaves the bottom, and I'm probably going to have the same problem I did with the red. I'm going to end up having to put 2 coats of the brown on. And I've got a problem, or a possible problem. When I did the other set of 23, I originally went through and rolled the brown on, then came back through with my airbrush, did the black, and then went back through and did the second coat of brown over it, to clean up the black. And the black showed through the brown a little bit, giving the skulls more of a dirtier look. My problem with this one is I did the black first. Now I'm going to go through and put 2 coats of brown on, and when I do that, the black's not going to show through. So I'll have a choice to make at that time. I'll have to look at it after they dry. Do I go back on the first set and put another coat of brown on so they match perfectly? Or do I leave the first set as it is and have the skulls have more like a dirtier look versus the clean look? Or, depending on how I want to do it. And that's something I'll decide when I get to it. I do know I'm getting tired of painting. So I'll probably just leave it as is. But it's going to take about a week and a half to go through all 23 panels and get the brown done on them. Well, there you go. Project is done. Almost done, actually. Just finished the painting, and there's 2 panels side by side, so you can see what it's going to kind of look like in the photo hallway. Be a little different once we get the photos hung up and lit up, but it didn't turn out too bad. The one last step I have to do is I have 6 panels I need to get out in the shop, and we're going to cut them right down the middle in half, and we'll make 1-foot panels out of them. I need 12 1-foots, and I made 46 panels total, 6 of them to do that with. Cut them down and have to make the 1-foot panels. And then we can get everything put away and cleaned up. I'm going to do some of it now. I've got to get all my paints and stuff and my mess down here kind of cleaned up. I got paint stuff strewn all over my shop. I've got to get that cleaned up and get set up to do the 1-foot panels. Basically dragging out the table saw and what have you. Storage dump, I'm going to have to sort out and what have you. I still got the old panels from the photo hallway out there. Those are going in the trailer and going to the dump. And once I get those into the trailer, I can get these out and get them all put away, which will be tomorrow. Want to touch next vlog, next project. We're going to be, if you remember right, last year I went through and upgraded the wall panels in the water room, the blacklight room, including upgrading the water wall to the new style. The only major thing in that room I never got to was the video pumping station. That's that prop that has a huge eyeball on it. Oh, that's going to be our next major prop, and it's going to be a redesign. I'm going to do it totally different from the way I have it currently. So we'll be starting that here. Oh God, what is today? Thursday? Probably be starting it on Monday. I'm thinking. I've got some other home projects for the set dresser to do. I promise her I'd do as soon as I finish this project. But that video pumping station is probably going to be a 3-part vlog. 2 to 3-part vlog. So hopefully you'll get segments a little quicker. I hope. And I will probably do a reveal video for that project as well. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like all set up and working. Minus the water fountain parts of it. So I'm going to bring this to the end and do some video editing tonight and see if we can get this uploaded to you tonight. So stay spooky, stay toxic.